So the golden rule is the golden rule is to only use AI when you really need it.
And who said that?
That says Jürgen Bohn and many others.
Today we will talk about the difference of narrow and broad AI and why we won't have super intelligence anytime soon.
Well, if you look at the terms narrow and broad, they of course already imply a certain characteristic. And when we talk about narrow AI, we can easily think of a very specific narrowed down topic or capability that we want to provide using artificial intelligence. So that's mostly also what we have seen in the past and probably one of the most established uses of AI today. Now,
I guess there are not so all of the current applications are narrow AI, right?
Yeah, especially if we look into AI that is embedded into devices, machines. I mean, as a rule, they have very specific functions.
Thank you. That's it. Bye.
No, yeah, okay. On the other hand, as soon as we start applying AI in a broader context, let's say, not just on a very rigidly defined problem, but on a broader scope, we also call AI to be a broad AI. And that sort of means that AI also becomes a more generalistic intelligence with the ability to link observations and maybe insights across a range of problems and activities. So in a way, we also get one step closer to what human intelligence is, because we as humans still, are the most fantastic beings.
Don't flatter yourself. Don't flatter yourself. But the funny thing, or like the interesting bit, is that people think of, I guess, from science fiction and all the Hollywood movies you see, they are thinking of this of AI as this super intelligence, like super singular creature. Do you think it's possible? And if it is, then do we really need it?
Well, the possibility to exclude the possibility of future developments is kind of a futile and maybe impossible task. But at least I think one can say with sufficient certainty that at least today, a real universal super intelligent AI is outside of the scope that we can fabricate as humans. There are some people, though, who think that maybe we know from our own experience that even a very robust, powerful AI for specific problems, it can be a challenge. Now, the ability to correlate and correctly interpret many different events in daily life, as we humans do, even with very little, let's say, training, just maybe even from a gut feeling or from some kind of experience we acquired over our lifetime, that is still considered to be a very, very hard problem. And at this time, I would say that it's not in sight if and when we would achieve this.
That's why all the broader, bigger successes which we heard of, companies using AI were always applied for some specific areas where you had like a frame or like the range of data or potential combinations. For example, AlphaGo. Right? You remember AlphaGo?
Like the computer who beat like the Go
player?
Yeah. Of course, there were some very impressive applications of using AI, especially in the gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
Gaming is a particular good field to apply AI because while it may be very, very difficult to master the game itself, typically the rules, what is a good and successful game and what is a bad game, are quite obvious. So like in chess, when a checkmate situation occurs, as well as maybe in a game like Go, you can have certain patterns, you know when the game is won. Chess maybe could be an exception because you may not even need AI, because at some point it's possible that you pre-compute all existing game states, and it's like the game is lost or won from the beginning.
Because you just learn, right?
You just know all the possible moves, and you know for every move the winning next move. Ideally,
you study it by
so
heart.
Not really smart, just a super brain.
Perfect. So you have to have a good memory, exactly. Yes. But with Go, there are so many combinations. It's just hard to learn it as a human.
And that's also the reason why, to my knowledge, there's no solution today where a computer knows all the possible outcomes, but computers played against themselves following the rules so many times and at such an incredible speed that they became like so incredibly adept at doing that I mean, not even all of humanity in the lifetime could ever play that amount of games. And so if you look at it this way, it's not surprising at all that such a computer then would even beat the biggest grandmasters of this really ancient game. Quite a feat, and showing maybe what AI can achieve.
So this is another use of narrow AI, right?
Yes, because it's a very rigid application. So this AI is no good of driving a car or spotting cancer patterns or tumor patterns in a CRT scan. So yeah. Now, do you know of some examples?
Yes. Recent. Yes. No. Don't laugh. Be serious.
I don't know.
No. I heard of. I don't know the name of the companies, but I know that AI has been successfully used in the current pandemic, right? So distribution of vaccines, but also scheduling the patients who are more prone, like more vulnerable, and who should get a priority to get the vaccine. It's such a complex problem, right?
Yes. Again, AI is a very powerful tool for any kinds of simulation problems, and like logistics processes and others. In the end, to optimize like such processes, you will want to look at all the different combinations that can occur, and AI is a powerful tool to learn and play through. Like in the game of Go, many possible combinations that may happen, and decide what are really the most beneficial outcomes.
And that's also applied in the digital twins and smart cities, and planning all potential use cases, or outcomes when, for example, developing a new motorway.
Yes, for instance, when you can start with trying to figure out what would be typical, maybe weak spots, hot spots
with so many factors, right?
Yes,
so many moving factors.
Yeah. So you can see, you can apply the AI part even in medicine to the logistics and the distribution, who would benefit at which time, and also when you have other constraints, temperature, complexity of your supply chains, how to make sure that you can keep the cooling chains. So even there, AI can play through scenarios and try to bring you also the optimal strategies that are also cost effective and maybe give you the highest yield there. Now, what I also find like a really cool field of application is when you apply AI directly to the process of finding these new cures, or if we talk now about COVID-19 and vaccinations, of course, there's also so many parameters, so many experiments you may want to run through. And as soon as you are able to, let's say, move away from physical experiments, lab experiments, but you can capture this maybe in a kind of simulative environment. And then you use AI methods to actually play through so many different combinations, like many more that you could ever also in a lab environment sequentially look at. Then you have the chance to really spot those combinations that have the biggest impact. And this is now, again, I think where AI and machine learning bring us really tremendous benefits.
So when you're talking about AI methods, like, what do you mean by that? Do we really need AI, or can the other current technologies be as good?
So what's the problem?
So what's the problem?
AI is not an exact science or algorithm. Artificial intelligence, as a rule, works based on statistical, empirical data and what. So you will always only have looked at a limited number of cases that you use for your training, and there's always the risk that at some point your artificial intelligence will be presented with a situation that was never met before, and then the decision that is taken may or may not be a correct one. While this is opposed to a mathematical formula, a physical world model that will always be true within the scope of a system. So when you have an algorithm that always correctly computes an output based on two inputs, it will never err, whatever of the infinite input combinations you will feed to it. But an AI that was trained with a limited amount of data will only work consistently and reliably when presented with data that is similar to the data that it was given in the training phase. So for that reason, whenever you have a solution that already can be mathematically or captured or put into a physical model, you will not want to apply AI. There are, of course, always exceptions to the rule. Mm-hmm. Even when you have a physical model that works, that does what you want to do, you may still consider situations where artificial intelligence will bring benefits. It may be computationally so complex that it's very slow. So when you want to use this perfect physical or mathematical model, you may not be able to execute it in the time that you need to solve your problem. Mm-hmm. For instance, you may not be able to run all the simulations in the time that is needed or available, or the computing resources may not be available. So in some cases, it may be beneficial to have sort of this kind of surrogate AI models, which may not have the same expressivity, but at least be much faster to execute, need much fewer resources, and potentially can even be deployed on a product itself and run, for instance, in parallel to provide some real-time data or information. So, and maybe you may even want to combine such surrogate AI models with some deterministic mathematical approaches to even further kind of increase either the robustness and the reliability of the system.
But you lost me on the first sentence. So
I'm sorry about that.